Minecraft's newest update's here. It's called the Garden Awakens and brings to the game a new biome called the Pale Gardens and a new mob, the Creaking. And with the new update comes a bunch of awesome new blocks. So to celebrate 1.21.4, here are 21 building tips with the new Pale Garden blocks. There is quite the handful of new blocks, so why don't we split up these building tips by block type. Starting us off with the pale oak wood, this can be obtained from the pale oak trees in the gardens and has the standard wood variants and blocks. For the first tip, you can use the pale oak wood variants for kitchen cabinets. Minecraft kitchens have been limited in color and detail in the past. There just aren't any blocks that have so many variants and details that work in a kitchen. Pale oak wood changes this and allows you to create a modern feeling kitchen. I really think this wood type is going to revolutionize Minecraft kitchens and interiors. Onto our next build idea, you can use the pale oak trapdoor in a cellar. There's always those scary movies where there's just a weird hole to nowhere in the basement, and this works just great. The color and style of the trapdoor add a really creepy element, and if you add some boxes and barrels to create a bit of a maze to the trapdoor, it just gets a bit more creepy and strange. Who knows what might come out of that cellar? And on a similar note, we can use the pale oak door to create a creepy detail in your scary builds. The darkness of the black stone really contrasts with the whiteness of the pale oak and adds to the creepy vibe. I have a Minecraft castle that this would look perfect in. Next up, for those who want to get into the holiday spirit or want a reminder of the holidays, you can make a candy cane. Just use the stripped pale oak wood and stripped mangrove wood, alternate that, and add some trapdoors to help with the roundness of it, and you have yourself a candy cane. Pretty simple, but looks tasty. Next, we can use the pale oak log for roads. The brown-gray bark of the pale oak log works really well with the dirty and ashy color of a road, and if we add smooth basalt and deep slate, we get a nice textured road. It adds a nice bit of detail and story to your builds that you don't really get when you just use one block for the road. For idea number 6, you can use pale oak hanging signs to create a ladder. Just string together the hanging signs, add trapdoors on the sides, and you have yourself an awesome looking ladder. You can't climb it, but it's a nice visual detail, and it works really well in industrial settings. And for the last pale oak tip, you can use this new wood variant to create white gradients. White gradients are a great way to show shadow in your builds, and I use them a lot in my builds, such as this circus tent I made or this lighthouse I made. I'm just using pale oak planks, smooth quartz, stripped pale oak wood, and white wool. This might not seem super inspiring, but it is really important for builders and really takes your build to the next level. As for the vegetation blocks, they are pretty simple. We have the pale moss right here, pale moss carpets, pale hanging moss, pale oak leaves, pale oak saplings, and the eye blossom. All of these blocks can be found scattered throughout the Pale Gardens, and something interesting about the eye blossoms is that they open up into this really cool glowing flower at night. For tip 8, you can use the moss carpets to create these overgrown walls. Something about the moss carpets is that when you place them down, they run these little tendrils up the side of the block that add a little bit of detail. And you can use this to show a wall is old and has become overgrown. Another way you can use pale moss is to place it under a build to create a shadow effect. We place the pale moss under the wagon to show that the area under the wagon is darker than the part not covered by the wagon, and that some of the vegetation is dying away a little bit. And you can combine this with normal moss to transition it between the two. Next, you can add pale hanging moss in an underground base to make it look like roots are growing in from above. This detail really adds to the atmosphere that this is an underground base and makes it feel just a little bit more cozy. Now, the pale oak sapling is quite the unique block, and we can use this to look like a dried out plant. They're gray with just a hint of green, showing that they're not completely dead, but they're definitely on their way. You can either place a sapling in a pot or on the ground, but don't worry about the one on the ground growing. They only grow if you've placed saplings in a 2x2 grid. And adding these saplings makes it look like you either forgot to water them or this is part of an abandoned build. You can place an eye blossom in a pot on a windowsill so that when night comes, you get a nice glowing nightlight. There we go. It adds just a nice glowing element to your base and makes it look a bit more alive at night. Although do be warned, this block does not emit light, so keep that in mind. Are you tired of clocks, or maybe find them ugly? I personally do. Well, I have an alternative for that. You see, nobody likes it when you're mining and all of a sudden you come up and there's just a bunch of mobs everywhere because it's nighttime now. So, if you want to get around that, you can place an eye blossom in an underground area to show when it becomes night. When it becomes night, the flower's going to open, and that way you don't get jumped by creepers. Next up is resin, which is kind of tricky to obtain. What you have to do is find a creaking at night and hit it. There's going to be particles linking you and the creaking heart that spawn the creaking. Follow those particles and you will find these little orange dots. Mine those and you'll get resin resin clumps. Smelt up those resin clumps, and you will get resin bricks that you can use to create the resin blocks. You have the standard resin brick block, the stairs, the slab, the wall, and a nice chisel variant that looks a bit like flames. But we can get into our build tips. For tip 14, we can use resin as a lava replacement. Now, many of us have learned the hard way that lava can catch things on fire, so we can use resin as a safe alternative. You can use a combination of blocks of resin, the resin bricks, and even some of the resin clumps to create a varied landscape. And if you want to get fancy, you can use acacia trapdoors and pressure plates to show where the lava has cooled off in areas. Okay, I feel like this update definitely has a creepy theme. For this one, you can make a creepy image. Just place a wall of blocks of resin behind it, and then use polished blackstone slabs, stairs, and walls to create an outline of a mysterious monster or figure. And this works great to populate the walls of your base and add a little bit of color and detail that makes it stand out. Now we can take advantage of the resin clumps and use them as paint splatters. You can just add a painting, a paint bucket, a brush, and then splash the paint, and you have yourself a nice mural or graffiti. This would work great in any sort of metropolis or industrial area. And as a side note, we don't get many items that you can place on walls that partially obscure it, but just add a pop of color. The only other blocks like this are lichen and skulk veins, so we can do a lot with this. Moving on to idea 17, we have the resin tulip. Now, the most notable part of resin is its color, so we can do a lot with this. We can use these blocks to create giant flowers that would look great in a sort of garden or fairy tale build. And on a similar note, for our last resin build idea, we can use the brightness of the resin to create a roof. This roof really stands out, and believe me, you won't be losing your base anytime soon with this. And for the last block of the update, we have the Creaking heart. This is the block that spawns a Creaking, but only when we activate it, which we do by placing a pale oak log on either side of it, like this, to light it up. The Creaking heart can be obtained by either mining it in the pale garden with a silk touch pickaxe, or we can craft it by using 2 pale oak logs and a block of resin. As for the building tips, we can take advantage of how detailed the heart is with its brown and gray coloring to create a sort of wallpaper. Just place the Creaking hearts side by side and you get this really cool pattern going on. And I'm sure there's ways you can use other blocks or different positions to create even more interesting wallpapers. You can also use the Creaking heart as a detail in floors, either by placing them vertically to get this nice kind of wood pattern going on, or sideways to get a little grid going on. Again, the coloring and detail of the Creaking heart makes it a very unique block, so we can get these really interesting floors that are sure to wow your guests. And for our very last tip, tip number 21, we can use the Creaking heart as a decoration. It goes well on a shelf as a trophy from slaying some monster, or you can hide it behind bookshelves or walls as a sort of spreading fungus that's spreading throughout your build. But however you use a Creaking heart, it works great as a sort of portal into the supernatural world and just adds some subtle mystery and horror to your build. And just like that, we have 21 build ideas for the 1.21.4 update with all the new blocks. I hope you all found these build ideas helpful. It was super fun to put all these builds together, and I am super excited to see what these new blocks do for Minecraft building. I think they can revolutionize a lot of aspects of how we build on Minecraft. Let me know down in the comments which build idea was your favorite, if you use any of these ideas in your builds, and if you have any other ideas using these new blocks. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and have a great day.